This is The Edge with Mark Thompson, edge-show.com.
Hello. Glad you could make it here. There are a few things that I really love about this episode. First of all, some old friends are going to be with us. Arnetia Walker, a brilliant actress. You'll hear her reference things and go, oh, yeah, I think I've seen her in that or that. She's the only person to play all three roles on Broadway in Dreamgirls, and then went on to tour with Dreamgirls. Then she was on an NBC sitcom. Also Mindy Sterling, who you know from Austin Powers, and multiple Emmy nominations, and Stan Zimmerman, who is funny and delightful and so creative. He's directing both those actresses in a new show here in Hollywood. It was a fun visit. J.Elvis Weinstein will join for the visit with Stan Zimmerman, Arnetia Walker, and Mindy Sterling. Before that, Sam Rubin joins us to talk about Les Moonves and the sexual misconduct. You know, Les Moonves, who ran CBS, most recently accused of actually having women on the staff who were there to do nothing more than take care of his sexual needs. It's a really intriguing and bizarre story, and Sam talks about that, and also Neil deGrasse Tyson. But before that even, Michael Shure returns to talk about burying former President George H.W. Bush. He looks at that in sort of a historical perspective. And we talk about the horror show that is going on in Wisconsin and also North Carolina. So if you're a political junkie, you've got Michael Shure up front. Also, I should mention, if you're a political junkie, Corey Brettschneider, who is on the episode before this one. He's written a new book on the presidency and the Constitution. He has an op-ed piece in the New York Times this week talking about why this idea that you can't indict a sitting president may not be constitutionally sound. It's provocative, and we may get Corey on the show for the next episode to talk about that and also a couple of other things. But I just thought I'd mention it because we just had Corey on, and then all of a sudden these indictments come down, and there's sort of an unindicted co-conspirator, in this case, the President of the United States, and questions are now surrounding what legal jeopardy a sitting president can actually be in. Thank you, those who have supported us. You know, we don't accept advertising. And it's a free podcast, and we're pledged to both those things. And we're dependent then on listener support, and there are those of you who have sent us something. You know, there is a listener named Desha. She was the very first person to send us any money, and she sends us $5 every month. And yeah, it may not seem like a lot of money, but first of all, she has to put it on a monthly, and secondly, over time, that $5 adds up, and I really appreciate it, Desha. So all of you who have sent us something to the PayPal link, or those of you who've used the Amazon click-through when you're shopping on Amazon, going through our website, edge-show.com, thank you. By the way, I got an email saying, I was trying to send you money through your website, but I can't see the PayPal link. If you're on a mobile platform, if it's on your cell phone, you have to go up in the upper left-hand corner. They're like little hashtags, or they're like three little lines. Press on that, and it says donate, and that's where that is. So thank you for pointing that out. We're also going to try to get Venmo up there and other ways that you can support the show. But really, your subscriptions and whatever you send us along the way is so appreciated. More than anything, thank you for listening. Thank you for being here regularly every week. And let's get started.
This is The Edge.
The advantage, it means.
Hey, look, I just spit on me for no reason.
That's horrible.
Is there some comfort in uncertainty, do you think?
You're a degenerate.
Because Australian Shepherds need action.
Wow. Yeah.
This is The Edge.
That's a self-loathing term that I use for.
Oh, got it.
Look who's here 2 weeks in a row. Michael Shure, everybody.
Hey, it's my chair. Hello, everybody. Thanks for. If I'm not here, it's still my chair. So.
It is.
Yeah.
We love you. We're glad you're here. There's a lot going on. I don't know where to begin, but there have been some presidential appointments or nominations for appointments, a new attorney general. You can start anywhere in all of this.
Can I start by complaining about the parking here?
Yes, please.
Okay. I don't think people, the audience, they get shuttled in here. They park down below and they get shuttled in
Plus,
here.
they arrive early before
it's
their
different,
cars
and they do get here early. But when I get here, there's never a parking space. There's so much construction going on. You have to park far away. You have to move things to park. I just want people to know what I go to get to the Edge.
That might explain why it's so difficult to get you here. I just realized. But, you are typically granted a dedicated spot in front of the building.
Not when there's a man who's here washing the host's car.
That's right. There's the car guys here.
Yeah, car guy's here.
Well, I forgot about that. I'm sorry.
Right.
I stipulate to those apologies. All right. We do a lot of politics with Michael. That's his.
Come on, you have a chance to say
People say. No, I was going to say bailiwick.
Oh, they do say bailiwick. I thought you were going milieu.
Yeah, I decided to go bailiwick.
All right, I'll take it.
What is important? What bouncing ball should we be watching right now?
I think you have to look at what's coming out of Mueller and what's coming out of the Republicans vis-a-vis Khashoggi, vis-a-vis the new nominations to the cabinet. I think those things are important to look at, but they're all done. Everything is being done with Robert Mueller breathing down the necks of Washington.
And to that point, the Attorney General nomination is this guy, Bill Barr.
Yeah.
He was an Attorney General during the first Bush administration.
That's right. Yeah.
So, but how does he fit in specifically against the Mueller backdrop?
Well, he's somebody who has opined in print about the firing of James Comey, sort of in a supportive way. I think that he would not be being nominated were he not somebody who spoke up on behalf of Donald Trump, because Donald Trump is going to have a little bit of a problem now, and we're starting to see it with Rex Tillerson. As the old guard leaves, and some of them are leaving in a disgruntled way, they are going to speak up. Rex Tillerson is doing it now. He's calling Donald Trump, somebody who's basically unprepared. I'm paraphrasing. He didn't say that word, but he doesn't read. He doesn't really care. And when you
he tries to break the law, is what Tillerson said.
And then when you read further, you see that he's trying to break the law. He's just the first of a small parade of people that are going to be leaving the cabinet and are going to be free to speak. You can look toward Jeff Sessions. I would look toward H.R. McMaster, perhaps Nikki Haley. And so as that happens, you're going to have new blood in, and he wants to make sure that the new blood is supportive of him. As anyone, in fairness to Trump, you want people in who support you, right? There is also with Bill Barr the sense that he is part of the old guard in Washington that is more unlike Trump than like Trump. So he's able to kind of get him in there. He's like a Trojan horse for Trump. Maybe he's somebody who has the perception of being moderate, the perception of being, part of the establishment Republicans, yet he gets in there and he's not. He's on board with Donald Trump. We don't know that yet. He's going to have hearings, but he'll get support from many Republicans. Mazie Hirono, the Hawaii Democratic senator, has already said she will not support Barr, nor will she support Heather Nauert at the UN.
When you talk about Tillerson and you talk about McMaster, or you hint toward McMaster, this dirties up Trump for re-election, or what is the price that Trump is paying by people talking smack about him after they've left his administration?
I think it empowers an opposition to him within his own party as they get to 2020, and I think that there will be people who are going to find comfort in in numbers. Jeff Flake and Bob Corker didn't have those numbers when they tried to go against the president toward the middle of his first year. Jeff Flake maybe earlier, Bob Corker came on board later. They weren't able to get anything done. They were really just mouthpieces to an opposition. Ben Sass the same way. But I think it would give a little momentum to someone like Sass if he had a soft landing with people who were in the administration, who were Republicans who could vouch for that. Also, John Kelly is likely going to be changed at some point during the next, the next 6 months, I would imagine.
John Kelly is someone who, again, is, being viewed as the sort of the soup of the day in this regard, the adult in the room, right. Controlling Trump's worst instincts, controlling flow to Trump, controlling communications to Trump as best he's able. But apparently they're at a total stalemate now, and now it's just a matter of time.
Right. And the same with James Mattis. I think James Mattis, I think Mike Pompeo is really the guy that Trump turns to for the most support and the steady hand that he seeks. And I think that he's very proud of having replaced Tillerson with Pompeo.
On the topic of replacing people, Trump now replacing the UN ambassador.
Yeah, with Heather Nauert. So it would be Nikki Haley out, Heather Nauert in. But he's also downgrading the position, so it's no longer a cabinet position. So yes, she will be at the UN if confirmed, but she will not be part of the president's cabinet.
We have a lot still to get to, but before we completely get away from government in Washington, I want to talk about George H.W. Bush, who just died.
Yeah.
Something happens when presidents die or high-profile people die, and that is that it's hands off. We tend to varnish the history of those who've passed away. It's not good to speak ill of the dead and all that sort of thing. In the world of social media, I think you see a little more of an unvarnished look at those who've passed, and that was the case with Bush. Now, in mainstream media, he was utterly lionized.
Yeah, that's right. Well, listen, this is how we bury our presidents to a degree, and I don't think there's necessarily anything wrong with it. I think that people at their death, it was very complicated when Richard Nixon died, and people didn't know really how to mourn him at that time. We didn't have the same context of history that we have right now, where Nixon looks better, not for his crimes, but for his substance, when we see somebody like Trump in the White House now, who is such a departure from what we deemed presidential, and however we've defined that for 200 some odd years. This is definitely a departure, for better or worse. It pleases some people and some are against it. But we remember our presidents as we remember our family members, right? I mean, we don't, but we just do it on a grander case, in a grander way. When I die, I don't think they're going to talk about at my funeral how I got caught cheating in high school, how I, gambled before I should have, or gambled too much, or all of my flaws. They're going to talk about, the nice things about me, should there be any. And I think,
listen, I'm going to mention the gambling too much.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks for assuming you'll be at my funeral.
Oh,
I mean, just, wait for the invites to go out. And so I think with somebody like George H.W. Bush, I think there is some nostalgia, whether you liked him or not, for the way our politics used to be, and they weren't pretty. I mean, it was an ugly campaign. I was working to get him not elected. My first job out of college was working for Mike Dukakis in press.
That was the famous Willie Horton spot.
It was the Willie Horton spot. And I don't know that anybody, Lee Atwater, who ran a lot of his media and did that ad, and he was a real figure at that time. People knew Lee Atwater, and a lot of people knew that was Lee Atwater, and they wanted George Bush, who we knew was better than that ad, or we thought we knew was better than that ad, to disown the ad. He didn't do that. Black America, gay America, there are lots of people who have real gripes with George Bush and his administration. There are a lot of people who were Democrats who thought that he was palatable, which we don't do anymore, right? He may be the last president that we have who had support from both sides, where you maybe didn't agree with him, but you kind of liked the president. That doesn't happen very often. I thought it would happen with Obama. I thought some Republicans would like the man, see the effort, understand the history, and be able to separate it from their sort of tribal ideology, and it didn't really happen, and I was let down by that. So I think in a hokey way, I think it's good for the country also to take a time out. We take a time out, everybody's saying, well, does this mean we're going to go back to that, and maybe the bipartisanship will carry over? It won't. It never does. But it's important to kind of look, to take that time out and look at it.
Certainly the civility associated with George Bush and the competence, meaning he knew the territory associated with George Bush, those are things that are not in evidence at all in the Trump America.
That's for sure, yeah. The strong resume, too, that got him to the presidency, you don't have that anymore. Trump doesn't have the resume to be president. Obama didn't have the resume to be president. Bush the first certainly didn't. Clinton probably did, because it was the old classic. He was an attorney general and a governor, and that was your avenue to the presidency. And not taking it away from Obama, he was a senator, but he was in the second year of his Senate term. And we accept that now. It never would have been accepted before, but we accept it now. Bush was everything. He should have been president. That was the next job he could have had.
A lot was made of the fact that when Trump arrived for the memorial service, the interaction between the past presidents, certainly the lack of interaction between himself and Hillary Clinton, I mean, that's no surprise. Also, Trump's comportment during the service. I mean, these are all things that are being microanalyzed, of course.
Right. And you're looking at American royalty when you look at that row of presidents in the front, and the way you look at, if you watch Royal England and you see the weddings and you see who says hello to who and who sits with who and what they do with the Queen, there's something about that here. And again, look at our dynastic politics too. You have the Bush family there. You have the Clintons. We ran from royalty, right? That's why we created America. We've craved it from Kennedy to Bush to Clinton. Alan Simpson was there eulogizing the former senator from Wyoming, whose father was a former senator from Wyoming, eulogizing a president whose father was a senator from Connecticut. And you looked around the room. Whatever we say, we crave this. And the familiarity of incumbency is because we like dynastic politics. But then you look at the row and you see Trump there, and to many people, he didn't seem like he was part of that fraternity. And he wasn't. He wasn't welcomed as one, certainly. There were some niceties exchanged, but it was really something to watch the drama of that. And then George W. Bush came over. Whatever you think of George W. Bush, people like the guy, right? I mean, the I'd like to have a beer with him guy. They do like the guy. And so he went along, shook hands, gave a mint to Michelle Obama, a recall of John McCain's funeral when she needed a mint, all of that. It was nice. And then Trump was there, and he was totally disengaged from the other people there, and they disengaged themselves from him. And it showed you where we are compared to what we were burying, literally.
One thing, and then I want to move on, but when you're in church or synagogue or someplace you have to be, which is clearly where Trump was, you're someplace that he had to be.
Yeah.
You sit there and you don't really pay attention, certainly, to the prayers and with Trump, he's not paying attention to any of the eulogies particularly,
right,
regardless of how eloquent they are or whatever. Trump, and this is what I mean, and everybody can relate to this, when you're like in calculus class or whatever, when you've checked out someplace you've had to be, but really church and synagogue are great because you really don't want to be there most of the time. You're sitting there and you just start thinking about other stuff, right? That's where you're going. First you're thinking, oh, I want to get out of here, or this isn't even fun, but you start thinking about other stuff and your mind just goes, and this is true for everybody.
Right.
And I just know that Trump had to sit there for that whole time, something that he just loathes doing, and all he's thinking about is I think, the Mueller investigation, the pressure on his presidency, the money laundering that's been both suggested and demonstrated in different evidence that's coming forward now. In other words, the rising waters of evidence of criminal activity reaching even that stateroom level of his ship.
There's a microcosm. I'm not going to agree with you totally, but there's a microcosm in Trump at that funeral that I think is fascinating. I'm glad we're talking about it, which is that, Donald Trump was the guy from Queens who always wanted to be in Manhattan. And he didn't really know what to do when he got there. He went bankrupt. He wasn't part of the social elite. He tried to foist himself upon it by buying Mar-a-Lago and making it a destination for those who were. He ran for president, and he didn't know what to do when he got there. And I think in that row there, I think he really wanted to be there, Mark. I think it's different. I think it's the same kid from Queens who wanted to be Manhattan is the same president who feels a challenge of legitimacy, who wants to sit in the row with those presidents and is not like them. And I don't know that he was paying attention or not. There were times where he didn't know the prayers. And when you're in synagogue or church or chemistry class and you zone out, it's different. You're not the president. But when you're in a church and the country that you lead is mourning a fallen president, then you do, as you saw there, Jimmy Carter at 94 is paying attention. Rosalind, who's in frail health, is paying attention. And you're off wandering someplace else because there's still something about not belonging. And that's really, I think, something that eats at Trump and has his whole life.
By the way, this is interesting maybe I don't know, I'll mention it. I don't blame Trump for not singing with the prayer. He's not a church-going guy. He's not even a God-fearing guy, or whatever the phrase is. He doesn't care about that. So I'm going to give him a pass on, not singing the hymn.
I am too, but he also sells himself as the darling of the evangelicals, and the Christians swoon over him, right?
Yeah.
And they swoon over him, we know, for duplicitous reasons, but still, nonetheless, he's not saying the prayer. I agree with you 1,000%. If he were somebody who was not beholden to the religious of America, it wouldn't bother me as much.
They understand something, when we come back to that repeatedly here from time to time. They understand what we understand, that Trump doesn't give a shit about God. They understand that.
Right.
But they see him as their godly savior from a legislative standpoint because he's essentially surrendered the legislative agenda to the right.
And evangelical America has learned, and they learned from George Bush, and that the sort of evolution of evangelical America was all in that church. George Bush, his positions on pro-choice versus pro-life were so muddy that evangelical America couldn't stand him. They ran people against him, from Pat Buchanan to Pat Robertson. Then you get to now where they're like, all right, we learned our lesson. We'll swallow a tough pill as long as we get what we want, and we're getting what we want.
That's exactly it. Now, I think this is one of the biggest stories. We've talked about this issue of voter suppression and election fraud from time to time. What is going on in Wisconsin? What is going on in North Carolina? Update us on what's happening to those places where there's been an election, those places where there's been an election and there are questions about it. It seems as though there are a lot of forces that are efforting undermining democracy.
Right. They're both ugly. I think Wisconsin does more pervasive harm than what happens in North Carolina, because North Carolina may just be a couple of rogue people doing something bad to get their guy elected, and maybe the guy who was running knew about it, but maybe he didn't, and I don't know.
Just because you mentioned it, just
I'll
quickly fill it out.
explain. Yeah. So Mark Harris, in a primary, Republican primary in North Carolina, beat Robert Pittenger, who was the sitting congressman from the 9th District of North Carolina. He was challenged by Dan McCready, the Democrat. They ran the race. At the end of the race, Mark Harris was up by 905 votes. McCready conceded. Harris accepted. All was good. Then they found out that something called vote harvesting was going on. And what vote harvesting is you'll have somebody, absentee vote harvesting, somebody going door to door in different precincts saying, we will take your absentee ballots and we will send them in for you. Just give them to us, and we're just collecting them to send them in. That's one way of harvesting votes. Then, of course, they trash them or they go through them. They find out which ones were good and which ones weren't. It's hard to submit them once you open them. There are all sorts of things that you need to do. Sometimes they get them with the envelope. They say, we'll fold them up and put them in an envelope for you. And the votes for McCready they would toss out, and the ones for Harris they would submit. Now, Harris knew the guy who was doing this, and his name's McCrae Dowless. He'd worked with him in the primary, and it's throwing into doubt certainly this election. The Charlotte Observer is calling to have a new election, brand new, start from scratch. We'll see what happens there, but certainly the Republican Party in North Carolina is in a lot of trouble right now.
If they had a new election, it would just be for that district, yeah?
For that district. It wouldn't be for the primary, because the Secretary of State has certified the results of the primary. Now, if they find it went on during the primary, Pittenger, the sitting congressman, may have some recourse in court, but not with the Secretary of State as of right now. Going to Wisconsin, which is very different, Wisconsin's has a Republican legislature, Republican state Senate, and they just lost their Republican governor. Scott Walker, lost in a primary to Tony Evers, the Democrat there. So what the legislature has done in this lame duck session, and the state Senate has done, is they've begun to strip some of the powers of the governor because they can. And it'll ultimately be up to Scott Walker whether he signs that bill as the sitting governor or not. But when they come back, Tony Evers might be a governor with far less power than the man he's replacing in Scott Walker. And that is a hijacking of the will of the people of the state. And that's a really bad thing that's going on. And I think, it's curable, because what you can do is you could just say there's no such thing as a lame duck session anymore, or you seat people, a week after, a day after election, right? And there's no, you could say, well, you win, instead of waiting until January to take your seat, you have no transition and you just go right to work. Or
what would it take to get that into the legislative?
Well, I think it would have to be, it would probably depend state to state what the rules are. I don't know in the Wisconsin legislature. I don't even know in the California. I don't know.
Also, what was suggested is, in sort of the radical eye for an eye sort of suggestion was, okay, you want to play like that? All the Democratic states are going to do that too. We're going to do this to you the next time.
It's just not productive, right? That's sort of what happened with the filibuster, and look where we are. We'll filibuster, you'll filibuster, we won't filibuster, we'll get rid of the filibuster, and the Democrats are kicking themselves for doing that now. And Harry Reid, I guess, made a mistake. If you look at it, if you're a Democrat and you say, look at the way these judges get in, Brett Kavanaugh would not be on the Supreme Court if they still had the filibuster. So I think that that's the childish way of doing it. I think there's the logical way to do it is to say that you cannot do anything legislative except that which is necessary. Calling for emergency funds and disaster relief, calling up the National Guard, those sorts of things. But if you can't make law and you can't change law between an election and an inauguration, that seems like an easy fix.
Yeah, it's a big issue.
It's a big issue. It's astonishing. Hopefully Walker doesn't sign it, and he sees the wisdom that he's probably hearing from other states right now, though, we don't know.
Did you see that there is a boxer who is fighting this weekend? This guy, Patricio Manuel. He was Patricia Manuel.
I did not see that.
He is the first transgender fighter who is going to take on this guy, Hugo Aguilar. He's a boxer from Mexico. Man, that transgender thing is a really tough run. It's one thing to deal with your sexuality. It's another thing to deal with your sexuality and realize that, you're not the right sex. And you go through this procedure and all of these medications, and there's a surgery involved. And then this is clearly someone who felt they need to prove I don't mean to read too much into it, but it seems that way to me.
This is the ultimate retaliation.
Right.
Yeah. And also, what does Patricio Manuel wear wear to box.
He wears the
Trunks and no top, right?
Right,
Yeah.
right. In his photo, he looks like a guy, except for scars under his breasts, where the
Right.
breasts have clearly been modified. He preferred boys' clothes to dresses, kept her hair short, played with action figures always instead of Barbie dolls as a kid, fought in the women's Olympic trials as a boxer.
Oh, wow.
Fought as a woman. And even before those trials, he'd thought of transitioning, but the hope of representing the U.S. in the first Olympic boxing tournament for women held him back. He wanted to participate in that. On the trip home after that, he told his mother that he wanted to make the transition fully.
Wow.
It's pretty amazing, I think.
So go Patricio.
Buena suerte.
Buena suerte. All right.
So at the end of all of that, I want to know, so who do we bet on? We bet on Patricio. I'm sorry.
Yeah, why not? I mean, the guy's been fighting forever.
But the guy's been fighting the real fight, the
Yeah.
life fight.
How
Yeah.
can he lose?
When we come together again, which I hope will be next week,
Do we do a big holiday show?
we might do one. I want to talk about the environment a little bit, and I'm talking about from a legislative perspective. There's a lot of stuff that's been going on as various legislation is gutted. I feel like that's something we can talk about maybe
Yeah.
in your next visit.
I'd be glad to. Yeah, there's a Green New Deal.
Yeah, there might be.
Or there might be. Yeah.
Yeah. Michael, you're generous with your time and your opinions, and I appreciate it very much. Michael Shure, everybody!
Thank you all. Thanks so much.
I want to thank you for all the ways that you support my friends on the Edge podcast. And if you haven't already, why don't you show your support and subscribe? What's the matter with you? Go to Edge Show. Oh, it's Edge Dash. What's with the dash? Stupid. All right, I want to thank you for all the ways that you support my friends on the Edge podcast. Show your support and leave something on their website, edge-show.com. Stupid. Why is there a dash? Edge-show.com.
Welcome back to the show, Sam Rubin. Nice to have Sam stop in. You only come by when I give you a call, usually in conjunction with someone's sexual harassment. I think it was Charlie Rose the last time.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, you know what is interesting? When those allegations came out, which, let's say we're on a Sunday night and they announced his firing on Monday, and that was a while ago. I guess it's been the 1 year anniversary with Matt Lauer. We have not heard a peep from Charlie Rose ever since.
Yeah. And of course, we did detail that. Those who are curious can go back. We detailed the creepiness of like trapping a 21-year-old in your Long Island estate for the weekend while you traipse around naked. And I mean, it really was abusive. And he was a creep beyond any sort of understandable, rationalable behavior.
Right.
Anyway.
To new creeps.
Yeah, just to put the button on Charlie Rose, I'd read some stuff, and I'm sure you did as well, about how he felt quite the outcast in New York, no longer included on the cocktail circuit and sort of a pariah. But hey, man, that's...
You play, you pay. What do you, I mean, like, what would he expect?
Yeah. And I'd even seen something that he wants to bring back his show on social media in some way.
Well, this is like Bill O'Reilly, I guess, has in fact brought back his show. But, I tell you what, I think you do this on television and radio very effectively, on podcasts as well. We have this relationship with the audience that believes they know us at least to a degree. So nobody knew that about Charlie Rose. And when presumably his friends didn't know it either. And then when you find that out, it is so off-putting. And it also makes you kind of think, gosh, is my judgment bad? So I think that sort of contributes to the pariah. I'll go one step further. There's a story out now that Harvey Weinstein has written to friends. And I'm like, written to friends? Are there any friends left? And the email purportedly said, what a crazy, hellish year it's been for me. For you? It's unbelievable.
Yeah, there's not a lot of focus on the victims from many of these guys. It's true. And let me just make this clear because of what Sam's just said. Whatever connection I have with you, the listener, and whatever positive feeling you have about me, I want you to know I'm even a better guy than you think I am. And that is something you should hold with you and know going forward.
Well, this is my theory. Is that great success amplifies so if you're a jerk and it all comes your way, it's going to make you a bigger jerk. If you're a good guy and it all comes your way, hopefully it's going to make you, an even better good guy.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So let's get on to this Les Moonves thing. Now, Les Moonves, I'd say one of the most powerful men in media. He ran CBS and CBS Properties. That's a huge company that involves a bunch of cable networks that are under CBS. And that umbrella was all his. He was worth close to $1 billion. It probably still is worth close to $1 billion. And now we learn, first in a couple of trickles and then in what turned out to be something of a torrent of sexual abuse allegations, that he's not at all a good executive when it comes to, A, keeping his pants on, and B, taking advantage of who he is.
Well, I think the thing that is so startling in the newest revelations is this idea that there were people on the payroll, one specific employee, and then apparently 4 other employees who dabbled in this, and the job we're on our podcast now, was to fillet Les Moonves at his request. And so, I mean, that's pretty extraordinary. And what is surprising to me about that is you would do that at the office, which seems crazy to me. You know, I think a man of his...
To be fair, he spent a lot of time at the office.
I think a man of his economic means would, prostitution exists, does it not? I mean, it's just...
You're saying if you really have this thing where you need this that much, have whomever who you're paying by the hour wait wherever in some hotel close by.
Precisely, exactly.
Yeah. Why would you risk all of this?
You know, CBS Television City, there's a roadway motel literally across the street. And the Farmer's Daughter Hotel is another one right
now. I'm sure if you're Les Moonves, it may be hard to walk into that hotel or set up this kind of
tryst.
Inconspicuous tryst. Yeah. And so if you're thinking about it from his perspective, this twisted perspective, but he's very powerful. He can get whatever he wants. He can do whatever he wants, right? It was decades that he ran CBS. And before that, he was a big deal at Fox. I've got to think after a while, you feel as though you can do anything. And also, in a way, the easiest way to fly it under the radar is just have her come into your office and take care of business.
Precisely. I think that, oh, honey, I'm here at work. So I think that's number one. And then I think one thing that people who have been on the wrong end of this come to realize, and I would say this is, law enforcement and lawyers and victims, etc. If he did that to me in his office, well, I'm not the first one. I'm probably the 100th one. And one thing that has come up again and again in this, torrent is a very good word, in this series of articles and charges against Les Moonves is people's shocking realization, wait a minute, this wasn't just me. Again and again and again. The New York Times article that talked about an actress named Bobby Phillips, who apparently was described as an extraordinary beauty from South Carolina who came out to Hollywood, as often people do, and was just trying to see how it would go. And the complete blatant, hey, you take care of me and I'll take care of you. And when she expressed no desire or willingness to do that, she was blackballed. And then an actress, actually, Mark, and you may have had this experience, that I've interviewed many times, very attractive actress named Eva LaRue, who's had a steady career. Apparently the same thing happened to her.
Well, and Ileana Douglas tells a story about an almost violent encounter in which he pinned her down on the couch, and she feels that it had an effect. He pulled her off of a show, and it had an effect on her career there at CBS.
And, just a sidebar to that, when this all first started, and this is before Les Moonves was, in this universe, when the big New Yorker articles came out about Harvey Weinstein, first, of course, the New York Times and then the New Yorker, Mira Sorvino coincidentally was booked on our show the morning that the Ronan Farrow story broke. And so I said to her, hey, this is literally just breaking. Do you mind if we talk about this? And she said, you know what? I came here to promote a movie. Let me do that. And then I will discuss this with you. So we talked about whatever movie she was there to talk about. And then I said, hey, all over the internet, the pages of the New Yorker, and this was an extraordinary experience. You could literally see and absolutely feel from her ankles up this well of emotion rising through her body, because finally she could explain not only what happened to her, but what she's been coping with emotionally for decades. This is the Oscar winner Mira Sorvino from that Woody Allen movie. The career she would have had if Harvey Weinstein had not screwed with her career.
Yeah, he really interceded to see it. He
called the folks from Lord of the Rings. He called Peter Jackson directly and said, don't hire her. She's difficult. And that probably spreads from not just one phone call to one director. And this sense of finally of like vindication and relief. I'll never forget it. You could see it on television, but right in front of you, it was so, it seared into my memory forever. I'll never forget it.
And we think of her as so very successful. As you say, she won an Oscar, and she's remarkably talented. But yeah, she could have done so much more.
And so now she is a working actress who does, television, movies, and other things. It's not that she's not working, but not, we all feel this in whatever business we're in, not to the level of caliber that she coulda or shoulda, if not for this. And then these Les Moonves victims, for the most part, were never as big as Mira Sorvino is, even in this limited capacity. So it's something.
Yeah. By the way, just because you mentioned Mira Sorvino, I remember that during that same period, and it might have been in another New Yorker piece, Quentin Tarantino spoke about the Harvey Weinstein thing because he was involved with Mira Sorvino. And he said, I feel guilty now that I didn't step up because I could see we had literal discussions about what happened. And yet I didn't say anything because she didn't want to say anything And
he was sort of off the teat too. And I think I think two things, and I don't mean to speak for Quentin Tarantino by any means, but I think the two things he sort of conveyed were, well, honey, it's kind of like what you say it is, but it can't possibly be like what you really say it is. And, I'm this big shot director, and I was in a position to help, but he was a bigger shot producer, and he was helping me, so I didn't.
And that, I think he acknowledged, the latter point you're making, as something he feels really guilty about. So in tracking down whether or not Moonves did some of these things, they found enough of a constellation of accusers who were believable that they got rid of him. That Moonves left CBS. But he had this $120 million severance pay that was going to be awarded him with his departure. Now the CBS lawyers are looking at things, and they just keep uncovering more and more. And as you say, they uncover the staffer and everything. And it looks as though maybe they won't pay out that big check.
Well, the phrase is, and I am certainly not a lawyer, but are you being fired with or without cause? So if you're fired just because ownership has changed or we think you're too old or whatever, then he was entitled to the severance. If you're fired with cause because you stole from the company or you did other things, and what their lawyers apparently have discovered is that he used his position to, hey, honey, I'm your boss, and I'll give you a promotion, our word of the day, if you fillet me. Well, you can't do that. You shouldn't do that. And apparently he did that all the time.
Well, you realize also in this world of Hollywood particularly, it must exist in other industries with powerful men taking advantage. I mean, it just has to. But Hollywood's casting couch is legend, right? And
well, I think this whole idea, what is or isn't part of the deal. And so I do think there is this open-minded, potentially flirtatious, thing that frankly probably attracts people to the business to some degree. But where is the line? And what I think we're learning is, in these kind of swinging 60s, 70s, 80s, perhaps through the 90s, there was no line. And, it's very funny. I was going to, another actress who's very well known, who's very outspoken about this. And then you'll have people say, well, she feels that way now. She laid down 10 times at least, prior to her success. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it is confusing. And it is also the case that different times demand different standards. But some of this Moonves stuff, it would seem, happened in a more recent time. At least that's the suggestion, if there's somebody on staff who was there to take care of his needs. His wife, who's also on CBS, she is the host of Survivor and not Survivor, Big Brother, and she did the show The Talk. I'm sure her relationship with Moonves had nothing to do with the fact that she got 2 shows on CBS. I'm just saying it's good to be close to the boss. Her relationship with him and her marriage to him seemed to post-date a lot of the accusations that we originally heard about.
The couple things about that. The phrase in several articles of the reporting is that there was a red line, that all of this precedes their marriage. Les Moonves, as lore goes, was married when he met employee Julie Chen. And then Julie Chen sort of suddenly rose up the ranks of the news division, and they know, oh my gosh, she's got this show and she's got that show, and now she's Mrs. Les Moonves. There's also, and this I'm going to put under the category of rumor with a capital R. Mark, you and I are not fancy people, but you've been to that Barney's on Wilshire Boulevard in Beverly Hills, which has a giant spiral staircase that encompasses several floors. There is a story that the original Mrs. Moonves somehow ran into Julie Chen in that Barney's, and as the physical fight progressed, and mannequins and items cascaded down the stairs as they were fighting. And I've heard that story a million times. I have no idea if it's really true.
Oh, I'd love to know.
But I love that story.
I'd love to know.
And I think the original Mrs. Moonves is, very much alive and with us. So
she maintains, Julie Chen does, that she's going to stand by, Les.
Right. And so the one question for Big Brother fans is she is scheduled to return to the celebrity edition of Big Brother in January. Now that fairly or unfairly, my supposition would be fairly, the name Moonves has been so very tainted. Do people at CBS really want Julie Chen Moonves back on their air? Does Julie Chen Moonves really want to be back on the air at CBS? And the other side of that coin is, well, she didn't do it. Why would you punish her for her husband's misdeeds?
Yeah.
Or her husband's misdeeds before he maybe even met her.
Big Brother doesn't feel like it's a host-driven show particularly.
I think a lot of people could do that job.
Yeah, I'm just checking. Let's check on Neil deGrasse Tyson. He of science explanations, of bringing astronomy to the masses. He's a brilliant communicator for the scientific arts, and it pained me to see these allegations. There's a fourth one now that came through today of women accusing Neil deGrasse Tyson of inappropriate touching. Also, even worse than that, one accusation is that he drugged and raped a woman while they were grad students in an astrophysics program at the University of Texas. That was in the 80s. Now, she went public with that story a few years ago. Now, that story is joined by two other women. One is his former assistant on Cosmos. She says that he made advances one night at his apartment after work. By the way, that's an interesting thing. I was reading about that story, and it was after they kind of wrapped, this is what he says, they wrapped Cosmos. He'd been with this assistant the entire time. They got to know each other. They took long drives on the way to various shoots. And he says, hey, we talked about all kinds of things, but there was never any kind of inappropriate touching. In fact, I had a no hugging rule. At the end of our run together with Cosmos, there was a big kind of cast party or cast and crew party. And prior to that, I said, hey, she dropped me off at my place. I said, you want to come up for some wine and cheese? And she did come up for wine and cheese. And apparently that's where this whole thing went down.
Well, and again, the dilemma for, I think we all know what's right is right, what is wrong. But for people who are high profile people or not high profile people, if somebody invites you up, are you saying more than yes to wine and cheese?
Right. Are you open, Annie? Or are you sending the message that I would be open to more? Yeah. I think it's a tough spot, just to be fair about it. But obviously, some kind of physical aggression is not cool. And a fourth accuser stepped forward just today as we're having this conversation. So I guess what I would ask you is Neil deGrasse Tyson, as a result of these accusations, some of them very specific, is he so dirtied up that it costs him? It costs him Cosmos, or it costs him in his career. I mean, again, I'm guessing these accusations will never be completely fleshed out to the point that we're going to be able to know with evidence.
The one that I think about, and it's an incomplete analogy, this is within the last calendar year. Remember this blockbuster CNN report on Morgan Freeman?
Yes.
And there was no there, and you could see the bias of the reporter as plain as day. The whole thing was deeply flawed. And they went with it, which I thought was a big mistake. They've never really apologized for it. I think he's pursuing legal recourse. And, I think Visa dropped him. He lost 2 or 3 things. But he continues to work. And, it was a setback or a detour. It wasn't a derailment. So, gosh.
So you think this might fall into the same category where it's a setback or a detour, but not a derailment?
Right. In that, 1 is too big a number. 4 is a fairly substantial number, but several of these are from long ago. I don't know. And then the other thing is, are there lots of people in the world gunning to get, Mr. Tyson? I don't know that they are.
Right. And by the way, I mean, he occupies a really interesting,
well thought of place, yeah.
Right, special place in the media culture.
Let me ask you this. If they called tomorrow and wanted him booked on The Edge, would you take him?
Absolutely.
Would you ask him about any of this?
Of course.
Okay.
I mean, it's what's going on now.
Right.
I mean, I'd given the presumption of innocence, wanting to hear him out. But then after he left the studio, we'd talk shit about him like we do.
Fair enough. Everybody else.
Sam, I'll let you go with a question about the Golden Globes.
Please.
They just had the nominations, and you need to come in, Ronnie? Ronnie is he's the brains behind the engineering of.
You know what? Since I'm in here, I was flipping around the channels last night. Just channels.
Sure.
Open.
This is a good off-mic thing for
Yeah,
guys that
maybe
like
you
an
should
engineer.
get
Go ahead.
on mic if you want to know the story.
And I turned on my TV,
Uh-huh.
and who do I see? I see Mark Thompson on the screen.
Oh, wait, I'm really sorry he's not on mic for this story. Well, what was it?
Well, give me a second to remember what it was because I was.
Because I've done so much great work that has been on television.
Yeah, you've done fantastic work.
Set It Off, maybe. I'm thinking of movies I've done.
I haven't done anything in
Tomorrow.
a long time, but I get checks. They're all for 78 cents.
No.
Kind of a lot. What about you?
Yeah, I get a few. You're right. I do get them. They're all, they're very, very. But they remind you of stuff you did, which is kind of cool,
yes.
like the American president I did and stuff like that. I want to ask you about the Golden Globe. Ronnie,
Sure.
we love you.
You know what? I drew a blank. I was watching television last night. I looked up and I see Mark Thompson on television, and I had to do a double take.
Yeah.
But damn it, I can't remember the name of the movie.
That's okay.
I'm going to go stew on it for 30 seconds, and I'll be back. Perhaps. Gentlemen.
Ronnie, everybody. The Golden Globes. Now, that's the Hollywood Foreign Press. Let's pull back the curtain on that for just a second.
Sure.
That's how many people? 80-something?
90.
90 people who are feted, who are cajoled,
Sure.
who are soaked in gifts.
Well, soaked more now in experience. They
can't
think
give gifts anymore?
They can't give you a Breitling watch, but you can have lunch with Bradley Cooper.
I see. Okay. Well, they do all of that.
Right.
And then they come out with their list of nominees.
Correct.
Rank the awards for me. Golden Globes. Is it Oscars, then Golden Globes?
Well,
or-
I would tell you, I mean, there's 10 different criteria. And I would suggest to you the Oscars are at this super duper tier, higher tier. The Oscars have had troubles over the last few years, but still the most desired award, fantastic. I'm involved with the Critics' Choice Awards.
Of course.
A better group, to be honest, than the Hollywood Foreign Press Association. Critics' Choice, the best prognosticators of the eventuality of Oscars. About 300 members in our group. And
now,
then
are you feted and
we
experienced?
We are afforded the opportunity for these experiences, screenings, Q&As, cocktail parties. I'm absolutely convinced that Charlize Theron, a Golden Globe nominee for this movie Tully, the movie is horrible. But they inexplicably, they were like, well, maybe if she has a luncheon or two. And I think the Golden Globes more than anybody are starstruck. And how nice to meet her. How great to have her walk our red carpet.
Tully she's a mother.
She's a mother who has a
night
vivid
nurse.
fantasy life.
Yeah,
yes.
right. Okay. So this is the award season.
This is the award season. So consequently, what you're going to see, what the Golden Globes showed more than anything is the movie First Man. This is the Ryan Gosling, Damien Chazelle film. Claire Foy was a nominee, who played his wife, and the music is nominated. Nothing else, and nothing will be. This is the death knell for that movie. So the nominations today sort of help boost certain films and kill other films. The big boosts today, this movie that nobody's seen with Christian Bale as Dick Cheney, Vice. I thought the performances are excellent. Sam Rockwell, a nominee, Christian Bale, Amy Adams. Amy Adams, the unsung hero of the movie. Absolutely fantastic. I think people have been so caught up in Christian Bale, unrecognizable as Dick Cheney. I didn't even know she was in the movie. She is fantastic, and this attention could propel her farther because it draws more attention to her. This movie Green Book is very good, slew of nominations. Then other big movies that have not come out. Mary Poppins got more nominations than I thought it would get. And then the other one, which I think basically at this second, it's all A Star Is Born. That Gaga is going to win for sure. Bradley Cooper is going to win for director. They're going to win for Best Picture. Maybe Bradley Cooper doesn't win Best Actor because you don't have to win everything.
Did you love A Star Is Born, Sam?
I thought the first half was very, very good.
The first 3 hours were good?
The first hour was, I thought, extraordinarily good. When they sing that song, which is on the radio, that helps. Mm-hmm. Shallow, that will win, by the way, too. when they sang that song at our own Greek theater, not far from where we're doing The Edge right now, I just thought that was great. I thought it was great. The last half is less good. You know what's going to happen, and it happens. So, and that movie Green Book is very good.
Green Book is terrific. I saw it as well, yeah. So, Sam, we love the time you spend. I know you got a million things. Sam does like the morning show in Australia, then he does the evening show in Great Britain. I mean, what we see is truly just the tip of his media iceberg in this country.
Follow me on my socials. It's at Sam on TV, which is Twitter and Instagram. And, you know, I actually had a phone call today with a podcast company, so I may join you.
Oh, I love it. Well, look, come on in. The water's really warm. Every American has one. Why shouldn't you?
Fair enough.
Sam Rubin.
Thanks, Mark.
Thanks, Sammy. All right. Josh, are we ready to go?
Oh, Josh got something. What'd you get, Josh?
I got a latte.
You got the
There you
a
go.
latte. Oh, they had a latte. Wait a minute.
This tastes good. Thank you. That's really good.
Thanks a latte, yeah.
Oh, that's good.
Is this the most people we've ever had in the... I think this is really exciting. There are a lot of exciting things going on in this episode. We'll be sharing all of them with you. Want to welcome Stan Zimmerman. Say something, Stan, please.
Hello.
Director, writer.
Co-writer.
But you are a director and a writer.
Yes, I am.
You don't always co-write.
No, not always, no. But most of my career was co-writing with Jim Berg on Golden Girls and Roseanne and Gilmore Girls, things like that, yes.
And we'll talk about your latest co-written work.
Epic, yes.
Yeah. Mindy Sterling is here.
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Hi, Mindy.
Hi, Mark.
We've never met before, but I know your work, and we'll talk about it.
Okay.
I know some of your work. You'll be able to share.
And I'm going to find out a lot about your work.
I will never share my work, but Arnetia Walker is here. Hi, Arnetia.
Hi, Mark. It's so good to see you and be here with you.
I know your work all the way back to Dreamgirls.
That's right, 1983.
You played all three roles. The only person who's ever played all three roles at one time or another.
Yeah. At different
Not the
times.
same time.
Right. In Dreamgirls. And we're here with J.Elvis Weinstein.
Hi, Mark. How are you?
Josh is a documentary filmmaker, writer, producer, Freaks and Geeks and Mystery Science Theater 3000, and very funny. And we forced him into a position now where he's kind of standing actually like a foot behind me. And so he'll just chime in when appropriate.
Let me practice one. Okay.
Oh, that was good.
Very, very
Good chiming.
Yeah. I want to get to this production. You call it a play?
Yes, it better be.
Okay, here's a question.
Opposed to
First of all,
what?
it's called Yes, Virginia.
Yes, let me ask you a question about Yes, Virginia.
Yes.
And the theater. When I say show, I always think there's music in it. Or I say play, I think the implication is there's no music. Am I wrong? Is everything a show?
Kind of, yes, but otherwise you'd call it a play or a musical.
Yeah.
So this is a
okay.
play. We
Okay.
do have a little music interludes and a little dancing and lip syncing, but it's not a musical.
Okay, but there are a lot of people who don't like musicals. I don't understand them because I adore musicals. But there are a lot of people who will go to see a play, but they can't take the light change and then the music starting.
And
so
it's kind of a fake world where suddenly you just burst out singing. I don't know unless you
They
do,
have
you do that
no
in real life.
souls.
I
If you can't
love
go
music.
into to see a musical and just know what it's all about and know why they do it, and just abandon anything that has put you in a bad place, then you shouldn't be going to the theater.
I think you're right that something magical happens. I just was in, if I could share a personal story, Josh, I'd like to. I was just in London on a layover for one night, and I thought, and I'm staying at the airport at Heathrow, which is a jillion miles from real London.
And it's a whole town amongst itself.
Yeah, all the way
crazy.
up, you're right. But I thought, God, I've got to go to the theater. I've got to see some theater. So I look quickly at what's there, and I see a couple things, and a couple things look interesting. But then I saw 42nd Street, which they've done a revival of, which is just a big, brassy musical with tapping and singing. It's just magnificent. And so I schlep all the way in from Heathrow, and
That's a Jewish word, right?
Yeah, I mean, you're just,
How long was the drive?
It was an hour, 10 minutes, I think.
And how much were the tickets?
And the tickets were $82.50.
Wow,
So
that's
cheap.
No. I think that was $82.50 pounds. So what would that be?
Like $5,000.
But point being, so you go for 2.5 hours, it's 42nd Street. It's magnificent. And then you take that hour and 10-minute ride back to Heathrow, the airport.
But aren't you just like singing and smiling? It's a good feeling.
You can't get the songs out of your head.
Yeah.
It was the best decision I made in the whole vacation.
Oh, good for
That's
you.
so cool of you.
I love musical
But
theater.
do you go to theater in LA at all?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
Yeah, I do.
Obviously none of my plays so far.
I don't know that I was aware enough about your plays. You have to really hit me over the head with stuff.
I'm going to be
learning the whole show
play. I know.
thing right now.
Well, I'll be
now
hitting.
that I have the show play distinction.
Okay, I will be hitting you over the head
at this point.
Yes.
But this is a play.
It's a play.
This is
an hour and 20-ish minutes. No intermission. You come in. You have a great time. It takes place on New Year's Eve, so that's why we're doing it again for the month of December, from December 7th to 30th at the Dory Theater at the Complex in Hollywood, part of Theater Row.
So those who are in Los Angeles should come by.
Or fly in, yes.
Fly in and see it.
Yeah.
It's about a woman who has dementia.
Yes, it's a role reversal based on my mother.
Is that a spoiler already, that she's got dementia?
No, you can walk in with that.
Okay.
But that's all I'll say about that part. But it's based on my mother and my longtime housekeeper named Virginia. So it's based on real people, and it deals with real things like the death of my brother a few years ago. But also, as our parents get older, about living together. And my mother said she wouldn't move out of her apartment in Santa Barbara. And then she said, well, if Virginia were still alive, we could live together and take care of each other. And I said, well, she's dead, A. But it's a great idea for a play. And so I wrote it with Christian McLaughlin, and here we are.
Oh, that's great.
It's very funny, but heartfelt and sweet, but really, really funny. And especially with these two wonderful actresses, it's going to be crazy.
Mindy and Arnetia have done some very funny stuff. And Arnetia, you were on that show Nurses. I remember it was a very funny comedy. When was that? That was in the 90s.
Like 90s, 91, 92, 93. We did 3 seasons. Yeah, and you used to bring me lunch, remember?
I used to
Because I didn't have time to go out to lunch, so Mark would bring lunch.
I love Arnetia Walker. I don't mind telling the world. And Mindy, of course, you have comedy chops as well. You did the...
My background is improv, so that's another part of theater that needs to be seen and experienced. And I've done several plays with Mr. Zimmerman.
I see.
Not the first time.
Arnetia, did you know Stan Zimmerman before this?
I knew of him.
You did not.
Yes, I did. Well, I knew of your work.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah,
so how
absolutely.
did you, Stan, you co-wrote this, Yes, Virginia.
Play.
You
It's
wrote
a play.
The play.
You can say the
Thank
word.
you.
Yes.
You co-wrote the play. How does it come that you find these people who are skilled performers to help you serve up this piece to an audience?
Well, I used to work in casting when I was in New York, just out of NYU, and I've always loved the idea of casting. And if I wasn't doing what I'm doing, I'd probably be a casting director. But as a writer, in your mind, you think of voices and you hear people. And luckily, I had worked with Mindy a couple of times, and I always heard
still
her.
wants to work with
And
her.
literally, if I don't cast her in something, even if there's nothing right for her, she always gives me crap in social media about it. And so I knew right away that I wanted her to be my mother in the play. And I knew of Arnetia's work from Nurses, which oddly is a spinoff of a spinoff. I wrote on Golden Girls. Then Empty Nest was a spinoff of Golden Girls, and Nurses was actually a spinoff of Empty Nest. Now, how many times has that happened? I mean, they did that with like All in the Family, Jefferson's, Good Time, those kind of shows.
They were all Whit Thomas shows, yes?
Yes, they were, with Thomas Harris. There you go.
Thomas Harris
Don't
show.
forget the Harris, yes.
Who was the guy, the male lead, the older man who on that show?
Richard Mulligan.
Richard Mulligan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was a
Great
sweet
actor.
man.
Yeah. No dirt about him,
No, you know what? No dirt about Richard.
but some other people on the show.
Well,
When you're on soap, there's no dirt.
Oh, there you go. So I was lucky enough to.
So you knew.
I kind of in my head I dream and hear, and then I just get ideas, and then how did I even reach out to you? I think
well, earlier was it this year? Earlier
Last year.
2 years
this year.
ago, yeah.
A year and a half ago?
Yeah.
Was that a year and a half ago?
Yeah.
Time flies.
I know.
Yeah. And at that time, I was I'm still in school. I went back to school to study film. But at that time, it was like in the middle of the semester. And this time, he caught me at the end of the semester.
But she was like, "I'm not going to let you do the play again without me."
Yeah.
But how did I originally get to an agent, or just I bugged you on social
I don't
media?
know. You just called me up.
I have a way of finding people.
I was like,
when
who
I
is
get
this
it,
man?
who is this? When I get it in my head, I've just gone after people, and I've been really lucky to work with Tony Award winners and people, and I drag them into doing intimate theater in LA, because in New York, in London, as you were just there. Actors of every level do teeny tiny in little black boxes, or they do huge theater. In LA, it's kind of a caste system where you're only at, the Geffen or the Amundsen. And I want to change that dialogue here. If you're doing good theater, it doesn't matter if there's 10 seats or 5,000 seats. So to get these people of this caliber into our little play is fantastic.
I also come from the culture of, I guess that's an East Coast thing where New York, where you can see theater of any kind and it's just magical.
Right,
I mean, really. And yet when you come to LA, it is sort of weird. First of all, there are a bunch of people who don't go to theater. They're into television or film, which I understand. Those are legitimate media. But I don't understand why there is this reluctance. I would assume you, Mindy and Arnetia, you love the stage, right? You love live theater, I would think.
Yeah.
Uh-oh. Now she tells me. Yeah.
No, I do. Absolutely, I do. But if I was going to be honest, as an artist, theater, I think, is the hardest because there's no do-over. There's no cut. Okay, let's do it again. It's like that curtain goes up and, it's whatever happens, you got to go with it.
Isn't that the magic of it, though? Or are you saying there's a downside to that magic?
Well, yeah. And sometimes you forget your lines. I mean, if you're with an actor, and everybody does it. I mean, if you're with an actor that's there and listening to you, that's fine. It can be fun. I mean, not to forget your
Tell
lines.
us a story.
But sometimes.
Like when?
Sometimes, okay, when I did Ma Rainey, I completely went up. I completely forgot my lines. And the guy I was on stage with just looked at me like, and I was like, okay, now, help me out. And now another time I did a play with Felicia Rashad and I forgot what I was going to say. And she said, well, didn't you mean blah, 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 blah. And I was like, yeah. And so I was right back into it.
And now you'll be with Mindy,
who remembers
growling,
nothing.
But she's improv.
But
queen,
I can improvise.
Yes.
I am so excited to work with you.
And same here. Wow.
Yeah.
I want to hear about the asshole Ma Rainey guy who
I couldn't believe that.
he just stood there and just waited.
Yeah, and afterwards I was like, what was wrong with you? What he was like, well, he was like a deer in the headlights.
Right. He only knew it one way.
And he certainly was not, of the caliber of Felicia Rashad. So.
Okay, I need to flush that out a little bit.
Yeah.
You want names and
don't need names.
Social media.
Just wanted to feel the moment a little bit more.
After Dreamgirls, Nurses was a while after that, a few years after that, right? Or you were on Dreamgirls with the cast that traveled, right?
I did so many I did Dreamgirls for 8 years of my life. Different productions. I started in the Broadway production just learning the parts because Michael Bennett wanted me to open here at the Schubert, and he had like 3 or 4 more months to go, and he didn't want me to take another job.
Tell everybody who Michael Bennett is. I'm going to interrupt, but that's a huge. Michael Bennett was a huge.
Oh yeah, Michael Bennett was the creator of A Chorus Line and Dreamgirls.
I mean, he was really a pioneer in a way,
director,
a modern theater pioneer.
Well, he started off as a choreographer, and he was colorful. He was a colorful character.
More stories. That's where you jumped in.
Yeah, but
I'm sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
But
so
anyway,
so he asked you to.
He asked me. He paid me just to learn Laurel and Dina, and because he didn't want me to take another job, so. I was Laurel when we opened here, and I was always asking him, Michael, can I learn Effie? No, you're all wrong. And, Jennifer Holliday was Effie at the time, and so we opened here, and Lilius White, you know who Lilius White is?
No.
Well, Lilius is a wonderful actress.
Everyone look her up.
And she was Jennifer's understudy. Well, Lilius got asked to go and sing for President Bush in Washington, D.C., so she, of course, accepted that. And the night that she was gone, Jennifer Holliday decided that she was not going to go on. And at that time...
Wait a minute. Stop. So that's just, that was her personality at that point.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, Jennifer, but I'm
Okay.
telling the truth.
Someone diva'd up that night.
So she decided she wasn't going to go on. And around 4:30... I pick up the phone, and it's Michael Bennett. Arnetia, you know how you always wanted to do Effie? And I was like, yeah. Well, you're on tonight. Get over to the theater. So I did. And I remember standing in the wings. And at that time, they had hyped Jennifer so much that everybody thought if they weren't seeing Jennifer Holliday, they weren't seeing the show. But of course, it really is an ensemble show, though she's wonderful. So I'm standing in the wings, and they make the announcement, ladies and gentlemen, tonight's performance of Effie will be performed by Arnetia Walker. The whole audience went, boo!
Oh, that's horrible.
I was like, oh my God. So I went on, and after, and I am telling you, after that, I had them.
I'm sure they would be.
Yeah.
And they wanted to let you know that, in a way, look, we embrace you. And you know what I'm saying? The audience feels almost bad for their original reaction.
No, I think no, it's that the show is written in such a way, everybody loves the underdog. And the show is written in such a way that if you can walk and talk and halfway carry a tune, they're going to love you as Effie. Yeah.
Well,
I mean, but
and also you
hopefully
blew the
I was
doors
better
off.
than
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I don't know
Thank
if it's that's.
You're sweet to say that, but you really, there's a reason you've played all those roles in Dreamgirls. You can blow the back off that place.
I mean, you have to. That show is about the singing, though. And the
It's all
iconic
song.
songs. That's what I'm saying.
'Cause
So
it's almost an opera.
I don't.
There's very little dialogue in that show,
Yeah, it's
right?
a recitative.
And so if you're not, and
See what you're
especially
learning?
to hold an Effie, role, and the songs that she had to sing, which were so iconic, there's no way if you were halfway good that it would be anything that people would, go crazy over. You had to have really had the chops and then you had a great time with it. As long, I'm sure you were nervous as well, but no, yes, don't
Yes, we won't
underestimate
accept.
yourself.
Yes, we
Thank
won't
you,
accept
Mindy.
it.
I can't imagine you just being okay.
Your humility is rejected.
So there.
And Mindy, you
Also was one of I was Effie.
you also played
It was in Miami Beach
Oddly-
in 1941.
oddly not as well received. Oddly weird.
No, I was asked
Booed off the stage.
in the middle of the song. I was asked to
They
leave.
say yes.
Did the Austin Powers thing just blow up your world in a good way? Or
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, oh my gosh, yes. I mean, in every which way. The first one was not very popular, It
Is
was
that right?
funny. Yeah, no, it didn't do that well in the theaters. And then remember VHS, it killed, on tape. And then
that's why they made
they went to a second
sequels.
one. Uh-huh.
Oh.
And so, but that first one wasn't a hit at the theaters.
When you do a role like that is both blowing up your career in a good way, I mean, after the second one, I'm sure that was just like, oh my God, we got to get her in this and get her in that.
Well, I don't know about that.
But that's kind of what I'm curious about. Like, was the type of stuff you were seeing super limited and pigeonholey?
Yes. In the very beginning, everybody wanted me to do, well, she's Russian. She's not German. Well, my Russian and German will sound exactly the same, so I don't know what you want from me. So there was a lot of that and a lot of those kind of women, which I tend to play, very, sort of severe, uptight, in charge kind of women. So it took a little time before people realized, oh, you do other characters. So, which is why, coming from the groundlings in improv, that's where I met Mike Myers as well. But that's what I was, sort of trained to do. That character, Frau, took off though, and everybody wants a piece of that. So now everybody wants, oh, great. So she's really mean and she's this and that. We'll get Mindy. How many of those can you do, though, without going, I can't?
How many of those did you do before you went, I can't?
Well, I still do them, but not in a German accent, But what I try to do is I try to find something different about each one of them. I mean, I've played many a teacher and school principal where, everybody hates me, but I'm fun. So it's, at least it's a fun thing. It's not like, all one level. And then the writing's always sort of different. So, but I do enjoy them. I mean, I think it's much more fun to play, kind of a rich character like that than a nice I'm not going to be ingenuous anymore.
Well, no, I think that is true, though. I mean, I think certainly playing like the villain in a James Bond film is more fun than playing James Bond. I really mean that. I mean, I think you want to play a great, juicy villainous character. Look at Jane Lynch on Glee.
Yes.
I mean, that was you made me think of her when you were talking about
Why?
the fact.
Because she won
Don't bring
Best
that up.
Actress.
Oh, is that what was that?
Yes.
Did she really?
Yes, we got to go to the Emmys. So I did a web series called Sex and Execs, which I wrote a part for Mindy, and she got nominated for an Emmy. And we went.
And for another one too, for something called Con Man. So they came at
She
me
had
with
two nominations,
and I couldn't make the choice because I
gave her such guilt. Like, you're not going to pick me.
I didn't think it was fair to say one over the other. So I said, let's just put them both together and see what happens. So it ended up being that there were 5 women nominated. I was 2 of them.
And so they split the vote, yeah.
It splits the vote.
So Jane Lynch won, but she also did a shout out to me, which was very, very sweet.
During the ceremony.
Yes.
Oh, that's really
It was a
nice.
great
So
night,
I just thought, my God, I'll never have that experience again, I'm sure. So I wanted to live that and think, you know what? I think I did okay.
Pretty good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you.
That year, it seems like you can do better.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. But, that will always be, a part of me.
Yeah.
A 2-time Emmy nominee.
Well, that is. I mean, look. I know they say it's an honor to be nominated, but
I wanted to win.
it really is.
Are you kidding me? My brother was sitting there going, "You're going to win. You're going to get this. Mindy, you're going to win."
He's
I'm
no
like, leave me
help.
alone. Leave me alone.
I just couldn't believe that our little web series made for $25,000, and we're sitting at the Emmys in like the second row, watching you up on that screen as they list the nominees. That was enough for me, but I know you did.
But still, it really is. It was like now, at the time I was devastated that I didn't win. But boy, when you talk about it now and you think about it, I was very grateful and very lucky.
That is the new world, though, isn't it? That those web series and other creative projects coexist with, network television or whatever.
Yes, when I started, you had 3 networks to sell to, and if you didn't sell to them, then forget it. And this was a script we had developed actually at Lifetime, and they didn't want to make it. So then I luckily found a company, Tello Films, and we cut it into 6 web series, and we had great people. Sandra Bernhard was in it, and Bane Gibby, and wonderful cast.
The web is huge right now, and things have come from that. The shows have gotten pilots and series. So don't ever say no, even though you think, oh, this may not go anywhere. If it's a good script and if it's a good part for you, go for it.
Yeah, I mean, we live in a world that it doesn't discriminate between screens anymore.
Not anymore, you're right.
And so content is content to people.
And there are a lot of high-profile celebrities that will participate in that because they like doing that. So absolutely.
Yeah, and it does, it does give people a chance to take swings that they wouldn't be able to take elsewhere, too. So.
And nobody telling them you need to do this with it, you need to do that with it. It's like, no, this is ours.
Yeah. There's a lot of people who like working on things that people care about at any level.
Yes, I like that. Yes, that's true.
Yeah, it's true. The budgets and the star attachments aren't necessarily always what it's about anymore. In a way, there's been a kind of leveling that's good. I would think as a performer and as a content creator, and you as performers are content creators too, but I was just, as a writer-producer, I would think having all of these additional outlets, as you say, going from the 3-network system to now, you can literally, if you can put the money together in a, you can even crowdfund it. You
can do anything. There is the opposite of that, where there is just so much content. It is hard to watch everything. I know I cannot keep up.
You can't. You can't.
And then the award season, I'm getting all these, DVDs, and will you watch that? So it is a lot to watch. But as someone that creates it, it's great when someone says no, I can say, okay, well, I'm going to do it here. And the hope was always, and I would still love to take that show and hopefully get it to a bigger platform. But we got to make it. I got to cast who I wanted to cast, use the music I wanted to do. I got to direct on film, which I had never done before. So I'm thrilled that we have those opportunities.
Stan, you feel like you've been in show business since you were a kid.
Since I was 3. I did. No. I started when I was 7 as an actor and went to NYU to be an actor. And then I couldn't audition without my face like shaking. I just don't know how you all do it, which is odd because
you mean
now
out of nervousness?
Out of nervousness. Yeah. And I was just so young, and which is odd because now I'm teaching audition classes in LA. But
how do you teach the anti-shaking thing?
I discuss what the fears that will do it. Yeah, so you don't move at all. I talk about the fears that I've had. So it comes from a place of I was in your shoes. I know what it's like. Yeah, so I'm just
So you were struggling. So you're saying you couldn't do the
acting, and I met my writing partner Jim Berg at NYU, and I had all these crazy ideas in my head. When I was living in Detroit, I was unpopular and unathletic. So what you do, like I did, is I created my own network in my bedroom, and I literally had one of those grids where I scheduled 7 days a week against the major networks. I know it's sick.
Oh
Yeah.
my God, do you have a picture of that?
No.
I love that.
And if there was a show that I liked that got canceled, I would put it on my network. I loved Lily Tomlin, and I was like, she deserves a weekly show. So I had the Lily Tomlin weekly comedy hour, whatever it was, and I had it on my network. So I've always just loved television and ate it up, and so it's not odd that I ended up working in it. Yes.
What did your folks say about that?
They wondered what was going on upstairs. It was either very quiet or suddenly they heard West Side Story really loud and bouncing because I was doing the dances for cool. Yes, of course. And I had to slide across my shag carpet. So there was definitely parts of the shag carpet that were just flattened out because that's where I was doing my dancing. Yes.
I kind of picture the Gilda Radner, Judy.
That was me.
Yes.
The male version of that. That was me bouncing off the walls because too much Fruit Loops.
Sure.
And I'm still doing it in a different way.
Aren't we all?
Yes.
Look, listen to me. I'm coughing.
Yeah.
We have cough buttons.
That's what that's for.
Yeah.
But now we do Red Bull instead of
You
Fruit
thought it was
Loops.
to order one up?
I had no idea. I asked Mark, and he said, "Don't touch any of those buttons."
Well, we're here at the big iHeart Media.
Beautiful hair.
Yeah, it's really. But each mic has an on, off, and a cough button because when people are speaking or others are speaking, they can hit the cough button and that mutes their mic while they cough, and that way no one. But I just
or sneezes
Fancy.
or sneeze or anything.
There's no sneeze button.
or throws up.
So, Mindy, you also had this background in improv, but you were a performer, I assume, since you were also very young, right? I always just feel like that's inside the people who really pursue it as an art.
I was very shy, but like my first play was a musical in the 6th grade called The Mikado.
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
That's
so
Gilbert
that was the
Sullivan,
first
right?
You were
thing I did.
fantastic in that.
I was fantastic. I was, yeah.
We are gentlemen.
People, yes.
Oh, very
But
good
my,
job.
Wow.
My father was a performer. He was an actor and a singer, and he was partners with Shecky Green and Sammy Shore.
Wow.
I know.
God.
Josh,
So
that's
that
gotta-
was
Yes,
that
I
was in
perked
my
right
blood.
up.
Yes, but and my mom, she danced. So, but I was very shy. So I found out in theater, oh my gosh, you can be another person and you can get through life that way. So I always thought, characters would be my thing. So I did, theater was my gig. Yeah.
Did you, because your parents were such sort of high-profile performers? I mean,
they weren't high profile.
No, but the high profile in the sense that, I don't know if they were or not, but the other people you've mentioned, they enjoyed performing. I'm wondering what it's like to grow up as a kid in a house where mom and dad are both the...
Well, my mom, she stopped when I started to grow up. She didn't, dance anymore. But my dad, and they were divorced. So I wasn't around it all the time.
I see.
Do you know what I mean? So, but I did find this was my niche. This was my people, my tribe, were the theater people.
Would he drag you to Ciro's on his weekends and stuff?
No, but he did. He did work at the Singapore Hotel on Miami Beach for years, and he was the MC, and he sang, and he did comedy. And I would go, and I would just sit there, and I would beam at my dad.
Would you beam? Yeah.
I would, and he was always so proud of me. I mean, the one good thing about my family, I have to say, and I don't know if it's just because they were in the business or whatever, but I could do no wrong. Like whatever you want to do, you want to go do theater, do theater. You don't have to go away to college. You want to take theater and courses. They all just were like, we love what you want to do.
Well, they did that themselves. It sounded like they were Bliss followers themselves.
I guess, and they understood it, but nobody pushed me into doing anything except my father. I think I was like 12 or 13, said, so if you can do, you want to be a good actor, if you can do Shakespeare, you will be a great actor. So at 12 years old, on Saturday mornings, I had to do monologues and do stuff from Shakespeare that I hated. And I was too afraid to tell my dad I didn't want to do it. So the teacher said, I'll talk to him. Because I was horrible. So yeah, don't do that to your kid.
There's
That's
no such
not
thing as
okay.
good 12-year-old Shakespeare performers, by the way, for the record.
Oh, it was horrible. Yeah.
Arnetia, did you also, what was your background? Because you're such a strong singer. Let me guess. Did you
Church.
I was going to guess. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Gospel background.
Yeah, gospel background. But I was inspired to become an entertainer, a performer by Doris Day.
I love Doris Day.
I love Doris Day too.
All her movies. Oh my God.
Yeah, I was little. I was like maybe 4 or 5, and I heard her sing, "Once I Had a Secret Love."
Yes.
And I was like, oh my God. I thought she was so pretty, and her voice was so,
Smooth
warm and
yeah.
made me feel so good. I said, I want to do that. I want to make people feel like that. So, and during that time, I lived in the Deep South. So it was the waning days of Jim Crow.
Oh, my God.
And I remember one of my sisters had taken me to the movie theater. And so, at that time, all of the white people had to enter the theater before the black people could go in. So, and I was just a little kid, but I remember I was like, well, why can't we go in? It was like, be quiet. And so when they finally let us in, the black people had to sit up in the balcony. And I just had this feeling, not such a good feeling. And then this angel, Doris Day, she comes on, and I completely forgot all of that. And that was my first experience with the transformative ability of the arts. How
it can just change you, like, yes, and then all of a sudden you were like wrapped up in her arms. And,
Have you heard her early recordings? They're
yeah,
they're very
she used to
softful.
be
It's
big
not
band.
the pure Americana. If you
Really?
listen to her, find her early works.
But here's the thing. Soul isn't, all the riffs you can do. Soul is really singing from your heart and being able to impact other people, to touch other people. And she certainly could do that.
I loved her. I can't believe that you said that. I mean,
Of all people.
well, no, it just, nobody really talks about Doris Day. But I too, I loved her films. I loved her singing. I thought she was beautiful.
Absolutely.
She's a huge animal person. So
I love that story, because here is this little girl in this oppressive, horrifying history that she's living in real life. And then this white, blonde person comes on screen in the darkness of this theater and, as you say, has a transcendent effect on you. And and the ripple continues your entire life. It's
absolutely
really powerful.
My one regret is that in all my travels, I've never met Doris Day.
Guess where we're going this month?
She's coming opening night.
Stan's going to get her to
I'll
come
make sure that happens. Yes.
If anybody can get it to happen,
Please, somebody contact Mark, please.
Call her up.
Right.
Oh my gosh, would that be amazing?
Oh my gosh.
Like I have nothing else to do.
Give it to
I'm on it,
Stephanie.
yes.
Well, at least the bar's not very high. How old is she now?
She's in 90s.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think she's like 91, 92.
Maybe, yeah. But
How
she's
did
supposed to be healthy.
So a matinee.
Yeah.
Okay. There you go.
Come on, J.Elvis
I
Weinstein, everybody. So when you were coming up out of that, when you decided, you saw there was that moment that you related, but then did you try out in different stuff, or when did it happen?
No. Well, I was an orphan. I was born a poor black child. And,
I'm laughing. That was horrible. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, but I said it funny.
But you were so cute.
What do you mean you were an orphan?
I was orphaned. My mother died when I was a baby. I never knew my dad. And for the first, 5 or 6 years of my life, I was just passed around. But, in the South, everybody took care of everybody. So, can you send her on down to so-and-so's house, send it to Miss Fanny, and it was fine. When I was 11, I went to live with a brother, and my mama had 11 kids, and I was the 11th, but all of them were much older and gone by the time I came along. And plus, I don't think we had the same daddy. So when I was 11, I went to live with a brother in New York, and I had read about this high school that taught actors and performing, the School of Performing Arts. So I said, you know what? I'm going to try out. So I went and tried out. I did a monologue from A Raisin in the Sun, that Beneatha, me, I'm nothing, me. And I got it. I got in the school. And
this is where you play the Fame theme song.
Right. It's that same, right. It's that school, yeah.
And I did my first Broadway show when I was 16.
What was that?
It was called The Sign in Sidney Brewstein's Window. It was written by Lorraine Hansberry, the same woman that wrote A Raisin in the Sun. And at that time, performing arts had a steadfast rule. You could not work professionally and go to that school because they were creating artists, not stars. So when I got the role, when I got a part, I went to the head of the drama department and I said, Mr. Eskow, I have a role in a Broadway show. And he says, well, Arnetia, you know the rule. And I said, Mr. Eskow, you're right, I do. And I decided that I would like to be a star. So I'm prepared to quit school. And he said, wait, let me talk to the board. And they decided that I could stay and work, but I had to keep up my grades. I couldn't drop below a B, and I was responsible for all of my, acting projects and all that. And I really did that. I did it.
He really thought you were going to say no to the show.
Yeah.
That's the funniest part.
Wow,
that's true.
amazing.
He went for that first, right?
Yes.
Well, you know the rules, Arnetia. Yes, I do, sir.
Yes.
So when you so where did you get the personal strength, do you think, to get through all that, to get from that point A that you are at to that point B?
Well, when I was little, when I was passed around, most of the houses I stayed in were older people.
Okay.
And they went to the church all the time. They would spend all day Sunday in church. They'd go Wednesday.
Okay.
And sometimes on Saturday. So I got that, even though when I was little, I was really mad at God,
Understandably.
But
did people make you feel wanted at their homes when you went? Or was it just sort of, okay, it's our turn?
No, I mean, people did the best they could do.
Right.
It wasn't like, lovey-feely, but it was, they looked after me.
They fed you, they clothed you,
right,
they bathed
exactly.
you, they sang to you.
But it's so important to be hugged and to, there's a reason we have a mama and a daddy.
Yeah,
I
just
think,
that baseline level of security. And just, it seems like you must have had there's some level of self-assuredness in you, that when you saw Doris Day, you went, I'm going to be that instead of what is that? It's like, oh, that's that immediate connection between that. Says there was something in you that made that was possible from there.
Yeah, I just I don't know.
Well, it's a great story.
Thank you.
Stan, why don't you write that story, the
Yes.
Arnetia Walker story?
What else do I have to do? I'm getting Doris Day. I'm writing your story.
Well, you got a lot of work to do.
How about if I do the Doris Day story and I cast you in it? How
I
about
love
that?
it.
Well,
there you go.
okay.
Okay, fine.
All right, so I want to go back to the play before we wrap up because, again, I feel, especially having gotten to know you guys a little bit, this is an interesting situation. So we meet on stage an older person who's got some challenges with dementia. Is that fair to say or not?
You just come in on a woman watching tennis in her house in Bloomfield Hills, Michigan, and then her housekeeper comes in, and the rest you got to come to the theater and find out the story. Yes.
It seems like I'm imagining first of all, that relationship is so special.
Well, it's a little role reversal about, in my situation, when my mother was going through a divorce, my housekeeper, Virginia, took care of us as my mother was, in the bedroom with the shades shut and going through depression.
Sure. And how old were you when that was going on?
Well, there were problems starting probably around 13, 14, but then they didn't get divorced till I was 16, 17.
Yeah, but that's a tough time when you really could use...
And back then, divorce is not like it is now where like everyone's been through 2 or 3 divorces. Back then, I remember my feeling was I was embarrassed to go to school and tell people.
Oh,
it was embarrassment.
Really?
Isn't it? People are like, what? What is that? Now it's a badge of courage, I guess.
Right, certainly not unusual.
No. So, and luckily, in this play, I get to work through a lot of my demons. So instead of therapy, I put them in the play, and so there's a hodgepodge of different things that I put in, like my going to Studio 54 when I was at NYU ends up in the play through Mindy's character, and so it's a cool way to use that.
How old were you when you went to Studio 54?
Probably underage.
Well, I'm sure
but
you
people
were
didn't
underage.
care then.
No, I get it.
I was at NYU, so I was a college student.
Okay, so you're 19 or something like that?
Something like that, and hanging out with Andy Warhol, who I didn't know who it was, and he ends up in the play as well.
You didn't know who Andy Warhol was?
I did not. And, well, this story.
How'd you get in? Wasn't there an age limit?
No.
Back then they
I was
see all those
dating
pictures of Brooke Shields and Michael Jackson.
Yeah, they were there, and Drew Barrymore. So one night, after partaking in some things, someone was pretending to take imaginary pictures, and then she pointed up, and Andy Warhol was above me taking pictures of me.
Ooh.
And I told him to stop because for some crazy reason I thought he was taking part of my soul with each picture, and I didn't know who he was.
He was trying.
Yeah, he probably was, yes. So that ends up in the play as well. A little story.
Did he stop?
Yes, he did stop, but there's somewhere there are pictures of me.
Unless he
that
threw them
image.
in. Unless he buried them.
Not
one of those
that
little
Jewish
shoeboxes.
guy
He
with
kept
the
those shoeboxes
Yeah, with the
of
Jew
We don't want to
pro.
keep
Throw
that. That was a
it
bad
in.
memory.
Yeah. I felt like an outsider.
Was that time that was sort of represented as this decadent bacchanal
It's
scene?
so
It
exciting.
was that.
Yes, but as someone from Detroit, I didn't feel like I belonged there because there were all these really cool people. And how did I end up there? But I did, and I had that experience, and now I can put it into my art.
Isn't that always the thing, that no matter where you are, you have that distinguished double Emmy nomination moment, and we've all had these moments where maybe it's an award thing, maybe it's, as you say, Studio 54. I understand you're just a young person, but even as an older person, I find whatever you feel like, God, I just don't feel like I belong here. I don't feel comfortable here. I'm awestruck by the fact that I am here, but it's weird. You never, in a way, it jams your ability sometimes to enjoy or to the moment, I think. They always say, live in the moment, but you bring so much to the moment, I always feel. Sometimes it's hard,
I think that's a young person's thing. Right now, I feel like it does make sense that I'm here with all of you. It just fits right. And I think that's why
It's about time. That's, you do. Sometimes you go, well, it's about time, but, let's keep moving up and forward. Because then there's that going backwards, and the business is full of, taking 2 steps forward, 1 step back, going high, going low. And I don't know if that ever goes away with anybody, because I would always think as a kid, oh my God, you're so famous. You probably have a perfect life. And when you talk to some people, they have a lot of the issues that we have. They, are on medication. They have to work through this and that. Their relationships aren't, going well. They're having some medical problems. So we're all, nobody is like in that perfect place where you can go, now I can die happy.
Yeah.
I think also it's represented to us that people, just the way you see on television or read in magazines or however you get on the internet, even though there are all these outlets for gossip and for entertainment and news, they gloss over a lot of what you're talking about, the real texture of life, and so you end up with these unrealistic pictures of who these
Kardashians.
people are. Yeah, exactly. I mean, or whomever.
It's like, please, that it's shame on people, shame on the media, shame to have them be everywhere. You cannot walk away when it comes to anybody in the business without having them full frontal, having them. It's all about their lives. What do you do? What do you do? I'm not sure. So
it's clickbait. I mean, it is a clickbait, and it's a clickbait culture.
It is, and I guess it's hard for me to understand because I want to see people that have meaning and do good things and create good things and still have talent and that kind of stuff, not just to dress and look a certain way.
Well, do you think you grew into that when you were younger? Did you have that same point of view?
Looking at people and going, oh, well, I think we all had somebody that we emulated or that, I can't think of who it was that wasn't a talent or wasn't someone that I thought, what meant something in this world. And I just don't understand it.
Well, but I think, back then there was the machine that would mythologize people. The studio would have their actresses being mythologized and all, and they knew all the reporters doing the stories.
Well, just look at Doris Day and Rock Hudson.
Right.
Yes.
That was
yeah,
that
that's
was a
right.
fake
No, I really thought they were in love.
And all the other great
They
beards of
weren't.
the era,
I
you
know.
know.
I hate to break it to you.
But now people do that for themselves. You know, people mythologize themselves on
Well,
their
you have
Instagram.
selfies. You have. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
they
like,
are creating a brand for themselves and putting forth that fantasy lifestyle that they want others to believe they're living. And
It's
it just
so
makes
true.
everyone else around them feel inadequate or bitter or snarky or, you know.
It's like, just be nice. I mean, just why do I have to see 1,800 pictures of you, half naked?
Right. Or in any state of dress for that matter.
Yeah.
I enjoy that. I don't know about you. No, but then I think you can use your art for other things. So I can make this comedy and it can be about something I'm dealing with my mother and dementia.
Absolutely.
But also, it's not painting a multicolored picture. It's not black and white.
No,
and
well,
I think
you're-
that's why it's so important for us to keep. That's why I get up every day and I keep doing theater or making something, because these times are so crazy that I want to be able to laugh or hold or cry or have people come and experience something for an hour and a half without looking at their phone.
Right. Well, I think it's important to cling to depth in a superficial world.
Yeah,
because,
you have to.
because otherwise it is just a surface that people will put up and you can question it or not.
Because look at what we're teaching our children. You
Right.
know, I mean, it is. It's like they can't eat at the dinner table without their phone in front of them.
Right.
I mean, that's horrible.
Where is my phone?
Well,
know,
that's
as we're all
that
looking
should
around.
not be
now
allowed.
that you brought it up.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's a regular scene where you see families at restaurants and everybody's on their phone. I mean, every single person. It's
Yeah.
a family of 4, a family of 6. I don't care how many people are in the family. They're all on their phone.
Well, there is an addiction. I really believe that there is a psychological and physical addiction to it. And the phone people and they all know that. And they all want, it's money, it's greed. They want, it's almost like they want to, the power, they want to, rule the world. And they have done a very nice job of it, because we are all of us in this room are addicted to it.
Yeah, it's the same psychology that they,
Uh,
the same psychology they use to program slot machines is the same sort of
Yes.
schedule of dopamine hits that you get on your
Yeah.
phone.
Exactly.
Oh my God! I was just in Vegas over the Thanksgiving, and and looking around. We just went to one of the casinos to eat, actually a buffet, but watching all of those people sitting there at the just the slots. A, they look so unhappy.
Absolutely.
B, it's just sad to me, and they're smoking and they're overweight and they're alone, and
They're like
I don't know.
chimps in every medical experiment at once.
It made me sad. You made me sad because you know that this isn't like, oh, I haven't done this in years. No, honey, you're here every single night.
But maybe it makes them happy.
But they don't let me see your happiness.
That's right.
You're like, you're gonna be.
They're wearing their happiness on the inside.
Maybe.
Yeah,
they are,
maybe.
yeah.
You're just chasing the dragon. The dragon is the,
Yes.
whatever, that dopamine. It's exactly right. But of course you're right, but they're here. And then, of course, when you have to promote a project or you want to get the word out about something you're doing, you need that social media. And you go, God damn it, I wish I had posted more Instagram pictures, because then I would have a bigger audience. You know what I mean? So
Right.
you're caught in the blades of this machine that you're talking about. It's really...
It's
But there's a way to enjoy it, get knowledge from it, and not be negative about it, I think.
See,
There you go.
Stan is
Mr.
really...
Pollyanna over here.
I feel like Stan is more settled than I am. He's more... he's
very
psyche.
much. Oh, very much, Mark. I'm so sorry. I barely know you, but
And
I
you're
can
getting
just
it.
see from this interview.
Oh my God! Well, the play. I was going to say the show. The show.
You can call it a show. For you,
the
we'll
show.
call it a show.
The show is called Yes, Virginia, and it stars Mindy Sterling and Arnetia Walker. Co-written and directed by Stan Zimmerman, and I will see it.
I can't wait for you
to see it. Yeah, really excited, and I'm excited to watch you guys. Really, Mindy and Arnetia. I am glad we've had this, because Arnetia, I'm such a fan in every way, and I want to see more of the stuff you're doing. I hope you are going to do more.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I feel like you were
Absolutely.
off my radar for too long.
Yeah. Yeah.
We got
She's
her back.
back.
She
I'm
came,
back.
she came from D.C. to do this, and
Yeah.
I'm very honored that you would take the time and the energy to be a part of this great show. But I just want to make sure people knew brownpapertickets.com to get tickets.
Oh, yeah, please. And
Yes.
we'll have a link
Thank
on
you.
our website, edge-show.com. You can click there, and in the episode description, there'll be a click through
Brownpapertickets.com.
brownpapertickets.com. That's cool. You live in D.C. now? How did you end up in D.C.?
Well, my husband got transferred there.
And does he work for the government?
No, he's a journalist. So he was
Wow.
doing the morning show for Channel 7.
No
and
kidding.
now he anchors the news for Westwood One.
Wow, that's cool.
I'm single.
Are you single, Mindy?
Yes.
As am I.
Very happy.
You are.
Have you ever met anybody after the show type thing? Somebody was at the, like one of those things. You met anybody through a theater or
And
other
hook up?
production? Yeah, no hookup.
No. I was married for almost 20 years, but no, now I'm single. No, I did have in my youth some things go on during the show, and then after the show, we never saw each other.
Well, that's the beauty of theater,
That's what was
right?
theater.
Yeah.
Theater was that's what you would do because you would like fall in love with somebody's talent and think they were great, and then the show would be over and bye bye.
And you wouldn't have time to meet anybody.
No, exactly.
But I was asking her yesterday during rehearsal who she thought was hot or sexy, and she couldn't give me one
Couldn't
name.
think of anybody off.
So that says a lot, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, I guess, or that it's a great. Maybe that's good.
I don't know. And no one came to mind
That's not
instantly.
good.
But if I saw
gonna change
some,
that.
if you gave me some names, maybe I would do it. But it's not like something that's like in the tip of my tongue.
Yeah, I can't think of anybody like offhand. Where I don't know, but I suppose if given time, I could reflect on it.
Again, give
Let's
me
meet
some
back
time.
here in a week.
All right.
With our
We'll
list.
share our
There
list.
were 5 people.
Yeah.
Share our list.
This is great. Mindy, Arnetia, Stan, thank you. Good luck
Thank
with the
you for
production.
having us.
Thank you, Mark.
Yes, Virginia, playing in Hollywood.
Thanks, Joshua.
Thanks, Josh.
Thanks, Josh. Love talking to Stan, Mindy, and Arnetia, and I enjoyed everybody who contributed to today's show. Thank you. Thank you for listening. If you want to reach us for any reason, it's edgewithmarkthompson@gmail.com. Thanks for being here, and until next time, bye-bye.
Get more of The Edge on Stitcher and iTunes, or go to our website, edge-show.com.